From the depths of the haunted hangar, High Alpha Hooligans is proud yet reluctant to present Scud's Flying Freak Show. Hey hooligans, I'm Scud and welcome to the Flying Freak Show, where we're going to talk about the strangest, most unique, most odd, and in many cases, ugliest airplanes that have ever been designed. On this episode, we're talking about the Flying Barrel, the Stipa-Caproni. In 1932, a designer named Luigi Stipa, an Italian aircraft designer, built probably one of the strangest airplanes in history, and it was nicknamed the Flying Barrel. That is the Stipa-Caproni, and you can see here probably where it gets its goofy title, the Flying Barrel. This oddball airplane, though it looks ridiculous, it hit on ideas that were way ahead of its time and would end up shaping the future of aviation. Weird looking at that airplane to think that, but that's kind of the reality of it. So Luigi Stipa, the designer of this, he was a hydraulic engineer, very deep into studying hydrodynamic principles, and using those principles, he had this idea comparing his hydrodynamic principles with Bernoulli's theorem, and that if he could apply some of these hydraulic theories to aviation design, he could extract more power and more efficiency out of airplanes. And that inspired him to design this really weird and unique airplane. As you can see, just looking at the airplane, the entire airplane is a hollow tube. The intent or the idea behind it was that the propeller would pull air in through this hollow tube, creating a Venturi effect based on the shapes inside the tube that would increase the airflow more than just what the propeller was pushing. He called this at the time an intubed propeller, but his idea and his theory on this is what would later become known as a ducted fan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. You can see here the pass through the hollow fuselage. The design of the airplane was, because it's 1932, primarily made of a wooden frame structure covered in canvas, which makes this even more odd when you look at it. The airplane had a 120 horsepower engine, which was not a lot for this airplane, but it was able to get it airborne. And it did fly. They actually test flew this, and it was a successfully flying airplane, despite how odd it looks. When flown, the test pilots found it to be extremely stable, even at very low speeds. It had really good low speed stability. The problem with it was very loud, it was very slow, and it had a lot of drag. Though the engine design was really efficient, or at least the intubed propeller, the ducted fan, was very efficient, the aircraft design itself was not. And the shape, along with it flying slow and being draggy, is what earned it the nickname the Flying Barrel. So what happened? Like, this crazy cool design, right? This really unique and absolutely unusual airplane is designed, and it flies, and it's successful, and then that thought process just kind of vanishes and the airplane disappears. Well, it was obviously not successful, which is why it does not exist and why it was never expanded upon with the idea. They never finished working on it or never put more into it or advanced the design because it was deemed to be impractical. It was underpowered. It was not efficient enough to warrant further design. So it never went into production. Eventually, after a handful of test flights, the airplane was abandoned, and all original Stipa-Capronis are gone. They don't exist. There are, or is rather, a single replica of the Stipa-Caproni that does exist. It is at the Caproni Museum in Italy, and I don't know where that's at, but there is an airworthy replica Stipa-Caproni out there. So let's talk about like why this airplane was so ahead of its time, right? We talked about the Venturi effect with the hollow fuselage and the propeller pushing air in. That air drives through a slightly narrowing opening that widens in the back. That creates a Venturi effect, which speeds the air up, and that speeding up of the air pulls more air in to create efficiency on the engine. For 1932, that is way ahead of its time. That's light years ahead of its time. That concept of air flowing through a tube that has got the Venturi shape was advanced upon by other countries and throughout aviation history, but this was the first time that idea had been put into aviation and aerodynamic engineering and actually tested and flown. And the easiest legacy to see with that is what, like I said, became the ducted fan. And similar to a ducted fan, if you want to like trace the legacy of what this guy had created and imagined and put into practical testing, that ducted fan concept is what we see on airliners that are flying today. Though they're a turbine engine airplane, the turbine engine part, the self-sustaining turbine engine inside, is rather small. And what we have on these airplanes is what we call a high bypass engine, where only a small amount of air goes through the turbine engine, but a majority of that air that's pulled in by that engine is bypassed around the turbine and blown out the cowling from around the center smaller turbine engine, and that's the high bypass portion. That high bypass, that fan that you see up front spinning that is moving air through the nacelle or duct, is essentially a ducted fan. And so this guy is coming up with a ducted fan airplane in 1932 that we wouldn't see in the jet age for a long, long time. Even early jet age and airliners were low bypass or even pure turbojets where none of the air bypassed. And then we learned low bypass, getting a little air to go around the jet engine, increased efficiency. And then we expanded on that and we created high bypass engines, and high bypass engines are what are used today, and they're extremely efficient and powerful. And this guy was starting to pull that thread in 1932. So when you see this airplane, the Stipa-Caproni, and you look at it, it's very cartoony. It's goofy to look at. It's really actually like super. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's goofy. It's cartoony, but it was way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time. Some people consider it one of the strangest airplanes or strangest experiments as a push forward in aviation, and it was. To me, I say, this series of videos is about the strangest and in many cases the ugliest airplanes to ever fly, and I think this is it. When it comes to looks, it's a yes and no. I think objectively this is an ugly airplane, but subjectively, I think it's awesome. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's a really cool looking airplane. So I don't know. You guys tell me, is it ugly or is it not ugly? Either way, it's a really cool piece of aviation history that is far ahead of its time and pushed boundaries. And the concepts that this airplane were built on would later become the concepts that we built modern airliners and modern jet engines on. So for that, I have presented you the Stipa-Caproni, an aircraft pulled from the deepest depths of the haunted hangar and presented to you on the Flying Freak Show. Thank you for watching. Write something in the comments, and one, tell me what you think of the plane. Two, if you have other airplanes that you think warrant this type of short content, If you have other airplanes that you think are incredibly unique or incredibly odd or incredibly ugly that you want me to talk about, drop them in the comments. I'll take a look and we'll see if we can't put some content out on them. As always, thank you for joining me today here, and peace.